Okay, welcome back, guys. I'm so excited you're here with me for our third week of Marriage in Quarantine. If you haven't been able to watch our videos from the last 2 weeks, they're on our website. So feel free to go watch those, do the questions. They're going to be really helpful. I hope so far what you have done has been helpful. Today, our topic is sex and intimacy. I know some of you are excited and some of you aren't, but hopefully it will be a topic that can cause you to have conversations with your spouse. The reason we have this topic is because I think oftentimes we don't have enough conversations about this with our spouse. I can remember a couple of years ago I did a class kind of like this in person, of course, and Andy and I went on a date and we talked about the questions, and I remember that I was thinking that was so good for us to have that conversation, and trying to think of when we'd have a conversation like that before that time. It had been years. So sometimes this just isn't the topic that you approach in a way that makes you ask really good questions. And this is a perfect time to do it, because when life changes, sometimes that massively or minorly affects our sex lives and the intimacy that we share. And so with this pandemic, that's a huge life change. Some people have lost their jobs. That's a giant life change. Some people have had babies during this pandemic. That's a life change. Some people have chosen to retire because they're like, I don't even want to go to be a part of the workforce anymore. If you're a teacher or whatever, that's a big life change. The fact that you have everybody in your household all together all the time, that's like the most giant life change ever. And so and if you don't have people around beside you and your spouse, there's some loneliness that might be happening too. So everybody's got their different challenges during this season. But one thing is for sure, intimacy is important in a marriage, and it's important in this season also. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to start us out with some scripture, because in 1 Corinthians 7, it talks all about what it looks like to be in marriage and sex. So I'm going to read that to you from the Message. It says, "Now getting down to the question you asked in your letter to me. First, is it a good thing to have sexual relations? Certainly, but only within a certain context. It's good for a man to have a wife, and for a woman to have a husband. Sexual drives are strong, but marriage is strong enough to contain them and provide for a balanced and fulfilling sexual life in a world of sexual disorder. The marriage bed must be a place of mutuality, the husband seeking to satisfy his wife, and the wife seeking to satisfy her husband. Marriage is not a place to stand up for your rights. Marriage is a decision to serve the other, whether in bed or out. Abstaining from sex is permissible for a period of time if you both agree on it, and if it's for the purpose of prayer and fasting, but only for such times. Then come back together again. Satan has an ingenious way of tempting us when we least expect it. I'm not, understand, commanding these periods of abstinence, only providing my best counsel if you should choose them." Here's the thing. The reality is, even the Bible tells us that sex in marriage is important for so many reasons. It builds intimacy, it builds trust, it helps you to feel connected to your spouse. I'll be the first to say, sex is not the end all. Like, I've met with so many different couples, and sex does not fix a marriage by any means, but it does bring something to it that helps to gird it along. I've met with many couples that have said to me, "Kaisi, we haven't had sex in months. We haven't had sex in years." And these couples are struggling. Now, that's not going to fix their marriage, but it is something that's going to build a trust in them again and break down some barriers that maybe are there. And if you haven't had sex with your spouse for a long time, for whatever reason, it's awkward. It's weird. It seems crazy, but I promise, I've met with so many different couples, and it's a different experience, one you wouldn't expect. And so I want to encourage you, for anyone out there right now who feels like there's a distance in this area of your marriage, I want you to talk about these questions. I want you to intentionally pursue intimacy with your spouse. And intimacy isn't just sex, but intimacy, whether that's serving, hugs, touch, whatever it is, all words of encouragement, any of that intimacy will build a closeness that hopefully helps you to be able to be more comfortable when it comes to sex. But you've got to start somewhere and start trying and being intentional. For those people who do have a sex life, whether it's great or it's struggling, this is for you too, because this is a time for you to be able to talk about what it looks like to be close in this season. Even if the pandemic isn't bothering you, there's other things in life that cause your sex life to struggle. It could be health issues, it could be having a baby, it could just be life changes in general, it could just be exhaustion. I had one person who his chemicals were off. Even in his mid-30s, his testosterone was totally off, and so it had massively affected their sex life. I have women whose hormones are off or things going on in their bodies, and they've gone to see the doctor, and the doctor has helped them, and they've gotten back their sex drive, they've gotten back their desire. And so sometimes it's just a medical reason, and you need to go talk to a doctor. You need to talk to each other. A spouse is very understanding when they feel like the other person is trying to fix whatever the problem is. So please don't be shy in talking to your spouse. So as you talk about these questions today that I'm going to give you, be real with one another. Be honest. Allow yourself to break down your walls and just share where you're at. In Preparing Rich, they've done many studies, this organization, and one of the things they've said is that a good sexual relationship goes hand in hand with a good emotional relationship. Sexuality flows from intimacy based on honest communication. And we talked about how to have good communication, but honest communication means you're going to tell your spouse really where you're at and what you're feeling and what's going on in all areas, not just in this one. It's based on friendship. It's based on passionate love. It's based on relationship equality. The fact that even in Scripture it says that there's mutuality in marriage. It's for both of you. And anything is mutuality when it comes to marriage. And an equal respect and understanding of each other can go a really long ways to helping with intimacy and sex. It's based on trust. If trust has been broken, then you have to rebuild that. And sometimes that's a slow journey to rebuild that. And so you have to be okay with it taking some time, but it's based on trust. And you've got to rebuild trust to feel safe, to have a healthy sexual relationship with your spouse. Healthy conflict. Last week we talked about conflict resolution. Healthy conflict sometimes can actually bring a desire for each other. When you finish a conflict and you feel like it's a win-win, or you feel like y'all have gotten to some type of resolution, sometimes that brings an intimacy and a desire for one another that you wouldn't even expect. And the last one is just respect in general. We have to respect our spouses for us to be able to do any of the things that I just said. You can't have trust, you can't have passionate love, you can't have friendship and honest communication if you don't respect each other. So that's a giant part of being able to just have a healthy marriage in general, but definitely a healthy sex life. So I'm not going to talk too much because I want y'all to have the opportunity to really talk about these questions, because anything I say isn't going to matter compared to what you're going to say to each other with these questions. So I'm going to read off the questions. Also, there's a PowerPoint kind of thing about what I just talked about, and then there's also just the questions in general on the website. So I'm just reading them off, but they're definitely there for you to read as you go through them. But the first question is this: has your sex life changed since COVID? If yes, in what ways and why? The second question is, how would you define romance? What are the ingredients or conditions that make something romantic? What are even during this pandemic? What does intimacy look like to you? Has that changed since COVID? If yes, how? Affection and intimacy don't always mean sex. What are some non-sexual ways your spouse could express affection to you? Share if there is anything negatively affecting your sex life. Discuss ways to work towards finding a resolution for this. 6, give a realistic number of times you would like to have sex, weeks or months, wherever you're at. Each close your eyes and put the numbers down by your hands while you do it. Don't look at each other, put that number, and then I want you to open your eyes and kind of see what the other person is at. That's why you're not making a decision guided by what they're going to say, or after they tell you theirs, you change yours. I just want you to be really honest. Tell each other what your expectations are. What are your desires? And then if they're drastically different, then you're going to want to talk about how to compromise. Sometimes they're exactly the same, and it's encouraging to see that your spouse is on the same page with you. So make sure you do this. And lastly, this question will help you with your 7th question. Come up with strategies to help make your sex life a priority. I've had many people do many different things to prioritize that. Whether they pick certain days to have sex because they know that they have to do that to be able to make it a priority. Or I had one woman that I knew who put lingerie under her pillow when she made the bed. So that night she had already put in her mind and prepared herself and wanted to put an extra effort into their sex life, and so that's what she did. So there's all different things that you can come up with that will help with your sex life and that will help you to prioritize that. The whole topic or the whole overarching umbrella of this marriage in quarantine is the word intentional. Guys, being intentional in your marriage, whether it's communication, conflict resolution, sex, and intimacy, is huge to feeling satisfied within your marriage and feeling loved and cared for by your spouse. So go have fun. Remember that these questions aren't supposed to take you hours. Literally, I'd like you to get done with them within 30 to 40 minutes, and then just spend some time together, enjoy each other, relax, have fun. Thanks.